Reichlin, Ambassador of Switzerland to the Philippines.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask our gracious host to allow me first to welcome our dear friends from the Pacific Island states. I have the privilege to be accredited as ambassador to Marshall Islands, Palau and Micronesia. And I know, and these are the closest ones, how far it is to travel for you, even to Manila. So you are extremely resilient. Thank you for coming and taking all these efforts. Now, I guess that everything in life depends on the perspective. And if you look now at the participants here in this workshop, we just can consider it actually as a Philippine Pacific Summit. But we can also consider it as a gathering between Pacific Island states that actually share many of the challenges and the opportunities, but sometimes are far away geographically. So I guess this is also a very perfect opportunity to exchange between yourselves, the experts in DRR and displacement issues. So let me just come back to my prepared speech, because I'm, as you have already noticed, I'm not an expert on DRR and disaster displacement, but I have been 30 years in the fields, and I have had some experiences in, let's say, countries where you have a lot of issues with disaster risk reduction and displacement. So once again, thank you very much also, of course, to our Philippine hosts and the high representatives here. Thank you very much to the UN platforms that have prepared these workshops also with their expertise. And of course, last but certainly not least, the local community and the local authorities that receive us here. So as it will be mentioned throughout the workshop, the Asia Pacific is of course among the most hazard-prone regions in the world, with high exposure and vulnerability to disasters and to the negative impacts of climate change. And sadly, the number of people and assets exposed to typhoons and floods in the region has continued to increase over the past decades. For instance, in 2017 alone, more than 8 million people in the region were displaced by disasters brought on by sudden onset natural hazard events. And against this background, it is unnecessary to repeat how crucial it is to strengthen the capacity to better prevent and prepare in order to cope with the disasters. It has just been mentioned by the two previous speakers. This workshop offers a great opportunity to exchange and discuss experiences and best practices, and in an aim to inform and inspire solutions and further collaborations in the field of disaster risk reduction, and more specifically on disaster displacement. And again, you know, I have been to your island states, and I have also experienced that many issues actually are linked to scarce human resources. So I guess even in this context, best practices and exchange of experience becomes even more valuable. For Switzerland, preventing and reducing the impacts of natural hazards for long has been a priority, and in fact, each year in Switzerland we experience multiple hazards like avalanches or riverine flooding or mud flows, and actually we have an experience since the 19th century, but we started to mitigate an impact on flooding in the 70s, really with putting an article in our constitution that was meant to prevent, to organize the prevention of disaster and organize it in a let's say, a systematic way. Knowing about the importance of DRR from our own experience, Switzerland has extended its quest in the international cooperation and At the global level, Switzerland took active part in the negotiations of international agreements such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reductions 2015 to 30. In our international cooperation projects implemented in the region, the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation components have been increased, and we are also strongly engaged in capacity development and policy dialogue with the ASEAN and the Pacific Island Forum. As former co-chairs of the Nansen Initiative and member of the Platform on Disaster Displacement, Switzerland actively promotes the implementation of the Nansen Initiative Protection Agenda. We do so, for instance, by working towards enhanced policy coherence at the global level across the relevant thematic areas such as protection and humanitarian assistance, DDR, climate change adoption and mitigation management. We also do it through financial support and technical expertise to concrete projects, activities in selected countries and regions. And this regional workshop is one of the examples. So our engagement in DDR on the one hand and in disaster displacements on the other are interlinked, and we therefore welcome the thematic setup of these workshops and are pleased that the upcoming global platform for DDR, which will take place in Geneva in May 2019, it has already been mentioned, will also take center stage during this session. And overall, the global platform will emphasize on the interlinkage between DRR and the global themes and processes, and in particular, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. The title of the global platform is Resilience Divided Towards Sustainable and Inclusive Society. So this is a very large title, of course, and this reflects the recognition that DRR pays enormous dividends and in creating resilient societies. In fact, we are convinced that disaster and climate risk management, as well as risk-sensitive socio-economic planning, will be key to ensure the development in sustainable and the goals of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement are reached. The discussion of the global platform are strongly influenced by the discussions that take place in various regional and sub-regional DDR platforms, including, of course, this workshop. And the discussion that you will have here over the next couple of days are therefore also a key of key importance to push the global DRR agenda forward. Accordingly, we call on all of you to ensure that outcomes and lessons learned at this workshop are fed into the Asian Ministerial Conference in DDR in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia next month, as it has already been mentioned by the previous speakers. So let me conclude by thanking again our host, the Philippines. As it was mentioned, the Philippines are indeed the DRR champion, and therefore I think all our participants can highly profit from their experience and their organizational and systemic approaches to these issues. So I wish you fruitful exchanges and many interesting insights, and also some discovery of the Philippines and the beautiful island of Bohol. And we hope as Switzerland to see many of you next year in May in Geneva. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Riley. At this point, we would like to call the head of the coordination unit of the Platform on Disaster Displacement, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Atle Sol.
Ladies and gentlemen, representative of the Governor of Bohol and Provincial Government, Philippine Government officials, representative of Pacific Island countries, representative of Switzerland ambassador, and representative of Germany, international partners, their colleagues, good morning. I'm here today to represent the Platform on Disaster Displacement, PDD, which is a follow-up to the Nansen Initiative. The PDD is a state-led initiative launched by the Federal Government of Germany in July 2016 and is currently under the chairmanship of Bangladesh and the vice chairmanship of France. PDD was established to follow up on the work started by the Nansen Initiative, already mentioned by the Swiss ambassador, and to implement the recommendation of the Nansen Initiative Protection Agenda. The Protection Agenda is a non-binding document endorsed by 109 countries in an intergovernmental consultation that took place in October 2015 in Geneva, Switzerland. The relevance of the Protection Agenda for this workshop is that the Protection Agenda consolidates a broad set of effective practices and policy options that can be used by states and others to reduce and manage disaster displacement risk, and to better protect and assist people displaced by disasters, whether that is internally within countries or externally across borders. What is very important to recall is that these policies and effective practices have been collected and systematized based on consultation with and recommendation from states and other stakeholders over a 3 year period between 2012 and 2015. In fact, the Nansen Initiative consultative process started in the Pacific. The first regional consultation was hosted by the government of Cook Island and organized together with the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Program, SPREP, in Rarotonga, Cook Island in May 2013, more than 5 years ago. And the messages and the recommendation and the practices that were shared in that meeting was very instrumental in how the Protection Agenda became a comprehensive protection agenda, and how the approach of the Platform on Disaster Displacement also aims to be comprehensive. The Protection Agenda and our work focuses on measures to prevent and reduce the risk of disaster displacement and addressing protection concerns when displacement is unavoidable. Mrs. Elizabeth Koteka, then the Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister of Cook Island, said it like this as the chairperson of the regional consultation in Cook Island, quote, "We must continue to push for mitigation and greenhouse gas emissions and adaptation measures to allow our people to live on our islands. A priority in the Pacific is to fight the adverse effect of climate change and to build resilience against natural hazards and the adverse effect of climate change to avoid that people are compelled or forced to move away from their homes. Movement of people should always be a last resort, and if people are forced to move, it should happen in consultation with affected people and with full respect for all their human rights," end quote. So this statement encapsulates very well what is the key principle of the Protection Agenda and the work of the Platform on Disaster Displacement. But we didn't stop the consultation in the Pacific, we also had a consultation in Southeast Asia. And the fourth regional consultation of the Nansen Initiative took place in Manila in October 2014. The consultation was co-organized with the government of the Philippines and the Department of Foreign Affairs. And again, we took much more from that meeting than we brought to it. Governments, participants presented and shared initiatives and comprehensive action at the community, national, regional and international levels that could be used to strengthen preparedness, adaptation and resilience and respond to some of the protection needs and challenges faced by those on the move. Many of the principles and examples identified in these two workshops, these two regional consultations, have been included in the Protection Agenda and form the pillar of our work. And it's also based on the outcomes from these consultations that is the reason why we are here today. We aim to look at all the tools we have at our disposal to build resilience, reduce risks, and to manage human mobility and displacement well. And at the basis of whatever we do shall be the human rights of the people that are affected. And I have no doubt that in the next couple of days we will increase our learning on these issues through sharing of practices and experiences. I think we have a great group in this room. I'm impressed by the efforts put together by the government of the Philippines and the Department of Foreign Affairs in bringing all of us together, and the wide variety of government agencies and departments that are ready to share with us their good practices, tools and knowledge. And we're also very excited to see so many participants from the Pacific Island countries, and that they have traveled so far to get here. It's also encouraging to see some familiar faces that we have been working with previously, and this suggests that we still have some work to do together. On behalf of the government of Bangladesh, and sending you their apologies for not being able to join us today, I wanted to let you know that we are very pleased and proud, together with my colleagues, in partnering with the government of the Philippines and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, ISDR, in organizing this workshop. I also would like to acknowledge the financial support provided by the government of Switzerland and Germany. I wish you all a successful workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solberg. And of course, we now call on Ms. Ana Ventura of the Economic Cooperation Section in charge of humanitarian aid of the German Embassy in Manila to deliver the message of the German government, and also on behalf of Ambassador Dr. Gordon Kriege.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, local and national government, international partners. On behalf of the Federal Government of Germany, I would like to welcome you all to this important regional workshop and thank the Philippine government for organizing and hosting this event. The government of Germany is particularly eager to address disaster displacement as well as other forms of human mobility and their interconnectedness to disasters, climate change impacts, and how comprehensive climate and disaster risk management contributes to address the issue. Disaster displacement ranks definitely among the biggest challenges of the 21st century. All over the world, we can already see the effects of disaster displacement in the context of slow onset events or sudden onset disasters, as we have experienced many of them in the Philippines. Millions of people are already forced to leave their homes every year, at least for some time, because of floods, tropical storms, droughts, and earthquakes. These few examples highlight the linkages between disastrous climate change and displacement and all their complexity. This link has already been recognized in global policy processes such as the Sendai Framework, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and in the Agenda for Humanity. Moreover, the ongoing negotiations about the Global Compact on Migration and the Global Compact on Refugees are extremely important to better integrate protection for disaster-displaced persons on global policy level. Germany strongly welcomes and supports these multilateral approaches to prevent displacement and address other forms of human mobility, such as more or less voluntary migratory movements due to climate change impacts. As mentioned earlier, Germany was part of launching the platform on disaster displacement as a follow-up to the Nansen initiative. We were also very honored to have been the first chair of the platform on disaster displacement until recently, when we handed over the chairmanship to Bangladesh. As you all may know, we are in the implementation phase of a 3-year strategic framework, and and work plan on the Platform on Disaster Displacement. The platform has 4 strategic priorities: to obtain better data on protection and displacement in the context of disaster and climate change, to support the development and dissemination of effective practices, to encourage policy coherence, address potential for the development of law and policy in this area. This workshop fulfills at least 2 of most important objectives: to support the exchange of lessons learned, how to better protect people displaced in the context of disaster, and to increase policy coherence by encouraging dialogue between actors from climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and sustainable development. A comprehensive approach to cross-border disaster displacement focuses on protecting cross-border disaster displaced persons, and also presents measures to better manage disaster risks and improve community resilience by reducing vulnerabilities. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is particularly important in this regard, as it requires all states to work on improving resilience against disaster and reduce both disaster risk and vulnerability of the origin communities. Disaster displacement is recognized as highly relevant by most states that have adopted the Sendai Framework. The framework also calls for enhanced action to protect and mitigate displacement and to address internal and cross-border displacement risk drivers. However, disaster displacement is not included among the global targets and indicators as part of the Sendai monitoring. Therefore, it is often not part of national disaster risk reduction and risk management planning. It is our strong view that we cannot afford to not address this gap. Disaster and climate risk management approaches and national, regional, and local risk reduction and adaptation planning in Asia-Pacific should include, in particular, measures to prevent displacement, to strengthen both institutional and policy coherence and local resilience strategies, to empower people and communities to make the decision to move out of harm's way, to effectively prepare for disaster impacts, and to protect the persons affected. Furthermore, the fate of so-called trapped populations means those who cannot or do not want to leave their home, and of particularly vulnerable categories of people, needs to be addressed. Therefore, it is urgently needed to enhance regional level risk reduction and preparedness efforts. Furthermore, it is necessary to ensure coherent approaches between international agendas, national and local strategies, which look at the concrete challenges in strengthening the resilience of communities locally. Within the PDD, we are particularly supporting such concrete actions to reduce the risk of cross-border displacement situations. Although not all displacement situations can be prevented, risk reduction work and contingency planning efforts still need to be improved to reduce displacement risks and vulnerabilities, to strengthen community resilience in the most vulnerable countries, wherever this is possible. To address human mobility as a whole, a more comprehensive risk management approach, which also considers the impacts of slow onset changes, needs to be adopted. This is also why we very much welcome this workshop today and in the coming days, where you as disaster risk reduction experts are gathering to contribute to such an improvement. I wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Ventura. The new Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction is unable to join us this morning. However, the Special Representative has sent us her message for today's occasion. Everyone, may I invite you to watch the video from the Special Representative.
Distinguished organizers and participants at this workshop, thank you very much for the opportunity to deliver these opening remarks. This partnership between the Philippines and Pacific Island countries to strengthen disaster resilience is an outstanding example of innovative international collaboration to prevent and reduce disaster risk. The focus of your discussions cannot be more timely. Disaster displacement, community resilience, and the application of science and technology to reduce disaster risk will all feature prominently at next month's Asia Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, as well as the Pacific Resilience Meeting due to be held in October 2018. Your focus on disaster displacement is particularly important as only during 2017, disasters displaced 18.8 million people in 135 countries, including 8.6 million by floods and 7.5 million by storms. In the Philippines alone, disasters displaced 2.5 million people last year. The majority of this displacement is being driven by extreme weather events which are on the increase in a warming world where population growth in hazard-prone areas is increasing exposure to natural and man-made hazards. The small island developing states of the Pacific are also disproportionately affected by extreme weather events. Each of the 14 countries represented at this workshop has extensive first-hand experience of the huge negative impact of disasters and climate change. Equally, though, each country also has first-hand experience of how a better understanding of risk, along with stronger governance and investment in disaster risk reduction, can save lives and protect livelihoods. It is now more than 3 years since United Nations member states adopted the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. We need to accelerate our efforts in accomplishing the goals of this historic agreement, which brought around a paradigm shift of focusing on managing disaster risk as opposed to managing disasters. Over the next 3 days, senior government representatives gathered at Bohol from the Philippines and the Pacific region will have an excellent opportunity to share and learn from your experiences. The Philippines stand as not only a regional but also a global leader in strong disaster risk governance and early warning systems that translate into early action at the community level. The Pacific region is a leader in integrating disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. The region also sets an example for inclusion of vulnerable groups and engaging communities at risk in disaster risk planning and management. To conclude, you are in a strong position to lead our efforts to deliver on Target E of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. The target is to have more countries with national and local strategies for disaster risk reduction in place by 2020. UNISDR is proud to partner with the Platform on Disaster Displacement in support of the Philippines government in organizing this workshop, and we thank you for this. I wish you well in your discussions over the next 3 days and look forward to learning of the outcomes. Thank you very much.
We thank the SRSG for her message. We also recognize here the presence of the UNISDR official representative, who is the Pacific coordinator of the UNISDR office, which is based in Fiji. May I call on? And please stand to be recognized, Mr. Andrew McElroy, please. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. McElroy will be with us the whole week to also share with everyone UNISDR's perspective and expertise on DRR.
That concludes our opening ceremony. We wish to thank all our officials and guests for gracing this event.
Yes, and therefore, I know you're actually really wanting to move. We will have a group photo, but we will begin first with an official photo of our officials. May we invite Mr. McElroy to join us in front as UNISDR official representative. And we request our officials to please stand and move a little forward. And we request our official production team to help us.
Sir, anong output dito for the Philippines?
Well, una-una, ang pinaka-pangunahing layunin ng Pilipinas ay para ma-share ang mga na-experience na natin patungkol sa iba't ibang bahagi ng disaster risk reduction at pati na rin ang climate change adaptation. Unang-una, may parte ang Department of Science and Technology patungkol sa science, technology, and innovation na ginagawa natin sa Pilipinas at backbone ng disaster risk reduction and preparedness ng ating bansa at ng anumang bansa. Dito ipapakita natin from the Department of Science and Technology kung ano ang ginawa natin sa innovation patungkol sa instrumentation magmula sa ground hanggang space para mabantayan ang iba't ibang panganib dito sa ating bansa. Alam niyo naman, since 6 years ago to 7 years ago, ay nagkaroon na ng mas maraming mga instrumento patungkol sa pagbabantay ng bagyo, ng baha, ng lindol, volcanic eruption. At dito sa inyo, syempre, at iba pang mga probinsya ng Pilipinas, maraming nilagay na mga sensors ang DOST para mabantayan ng ulan at baha. Nagkaroon din tayo ng paggawa ng isang satellite. Ito yung Diwata satellite. At kung saan binabantayan natin ang Pilipinas at makukuha natin ng mga litrato o larawan bago po man magka-disaster at pagkatapos nito. At magpapalipad uli ang Department of Science and Technology na isa pang satellite upang madagdagan ng mata mula sa space. So we're combining ground monitoring and space-based monitoring. Second, maraming namamatay. People are not so prepared because they do not imagine the disaster that they're facing. The key to everything is disaster imagination, where you allow people to have in their mind a picture of what will happen in the very near future. That would mean we need to forecast the possible scale of the hazard, the areas that will be affected, plus the effect. Who, what will be affected? Ilang tao ang mamamatay, masusugatan, ilang bahay ang masisira, ilang tao ang kailangang evacuate, at kung merong disaster, ano yung mga kailangan para makarecover right away. Okay? Pangatlo, ipapakita din natin paano i-combine yung science, technology, and innovation, early warning sa community preparedness. At dito sa Bohol ay nagkakaroon ng intervention ng Department of Science and Technology sa iba't ibang mga posibleng disaster tulad ng tsunami, earthquake, at sa baha. In fact, babalik uli ang Department of Science and Technology sa October together with the Provincial Government ay ititrain natin ang local governments pagdating sa mga geological hazards. So, itong regional workshop is an avenue for us to share, pero also learn from our Pacific island partners. No? We can learn from each other. At ika nga sa aking speech ay, if we work together, share what we have learned together, we can do better in disaster risk reduction. And this workshop is one of the activities that the Department of Science and Technology would want to partner, because we want to develop the Philippines as a science, technology, and innovation hub, regionally and globally, by using science, technology, innovation to make communities safer and resilient to disasters. So yun yung mangyayari. Pagkatapos noon, ang Department of Social Welfare and Development ay gagamitin yung mga information at learning experience nila para ma-share kung paano mag-evacuate, paano mag-respond after a major disaster. At dito sa Bohol, sa second day ng workshop, ay iikot tayo upang ipakita ng Bohol Province, ng Bohol LGUs, kung anong nagawa na nila at natutunan. At dapat kayo ay maging proud dito sa Bohol kasi marami na kayong ginawa. At mga winners na yun yung mga organization. And kami tinutulungan ng partners from the international community, ang United Nations Office for Disaster Reduction, UNISDR, Platform Disaster Displacement, gobyerno ng Germany and Switzerland, and together with the different national and local governments here in the Philippines.
So what are the interests of Switzerland and Germany?
Well, of course, ang isang highlight nila sa kanilang speeches kanina would be the disaster displacement. Kung makikita nyo, ang disaster displacement would be either temporary or permanent. Kunyari, magkaroon ka ng warning na merong darating na bagyo o sa ibang lugar ng volcanic eruption sa tsunami, kailangan lumikas ang mga tao.
Are they helping any kind, any form for us?
They provided financial assistance for this workshop.
Why they choose Bohol for this regional workshop?
Itong Bohol was selected by us, the host government.
Why, sir?
Because Bohol is not only a good place to stay because of our natural environment and natural resources, but essentially, as I mentioned in my speech as well, that Bohol embodies a province that bounces back and strives to make the province a sustainable, sustainable community from previous disasters. Literally, Bohol is an island province that rose from the ocean floor because of earthquakes and faults. But literally, Bohol has leaders and people who are united and, more importantly, have a positive spirit in bouncing back after a major disaster. Yun yung napakaganda sa Bohol.
Okay, we have the ambassador from Switzerland. Good morning, ma'am. How do you like? What can you say that Switzerland is participating in this regional disaster risk reduction and displacement?
Well, we are just supporting actually the government of the Philippines and the different agencies of the government of the Philippines who are the initiators of this. So first of all, we would like to congratulate them for doing this great effort and for bringing so many Pacific Island states together. I call it a Philippine Pacific Summit, actually here on DRR and on disaster displacement.
Is this your first time here in Bohol?
My first time, yes, of course. And
you think
it's
you
wonderful.
like Bohol?
Oh, already when you land, you feel like, there is a spirit of Bohol.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
How will you rate the government of the Philippines in terms of disaster and risk reduction? How will you rate our government?
Definitely, the preparedness and the work done with disaster issues in the Philippines and prevention of disaster risk are probably the most important in the world, or among the most important in the world. So I guess, we
From
can
1 to
all...
10, how will you rate?
This is not fair because I'm not an expert, so it would not be meaningful. But in terms of efforts, I think certainly among the 3 medals, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, sir, we'd like to know and understand: is there really is the region really at risk right now, or is there an imminent danger right now that we need, or that it is imperative that we need to have this kind of workshop?
Okay, I don't want you to think that the reason why we have this workshop in Bohol or in the Philippines is that something will happen in Bohol or in our country. The main issue here is that we don't know exactly when these large-scale events will occur, like sudden onset events like earthquakes or typhoons. They will surely come because these places in the Philippines and the Pacific Islands are really exposed. However, we do know that climate change is already ongoing. Changes has happened, and we know that the intensity of tropical cyclones have increased. And together with this wetter environment because of increased precipitation or rainfall, then the combined occurrence of geological events like earthquakes and wetter environment will trigger more or exacerbate various hazards. So the reason why we're here is to make sure that we learn from each other, learn and apply what we can in our own countries, and make sure that we do it fast. The time to act is now. We cannot wait. We don't know when this will happen. So because of this, we have all the knowledge from the different groups, and together with the United Nations Office for Disaster Reduction and partner countries, we can make our countries, our communities safer. But Of course, it's imperative that we act now, not because there will be a big event, but we don't know, but it can happen in our lifetime. We have to prepare our own countrymen, our own friends from other countries now, if not, the next generation.
Sir, are you in favor of creating an agency who will really oversee the disaster preparedness thing for our country? Because the way we see it is a multi-agency in disaster response, etc. etc.
The handling of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation leading to disaster resilience, of course, changed from with time. And we now see the importance of having a separate department, especially for disaster resilience. But among the many problems that we have in our country, many of the hazards are man-made as well, because of social issues and sometimes accidents. But there are certainly large-scale events that are more important, and those should be caused by natural hazards and climate change. So perhaps we need to look into the department as having focused on certain things. You know that disasters can be large-scale or small-scale. Small-scale disasters and accidents should be handled by the local government. Health-related issues should be handled by the Department of Health. Maybe natural hazards and climate change should be handled by a new department.
So you are in favor?
Yes.
Okay, so Sir, how can you compare the Philippines in preparedness compared to other Pacific countries?
Okay, I think it's fair to say that the leadership of the national government in the Philippines, the provincial government here, is very consistent with the Philippines being acknowledged on the global stage as an example of really preparing and preventing disasters. And just to follow Yusek's main message, this workshop is part of the ongoing struggle between memory and forgetfulness and complacency. And the more we remember in terms of the hazards we have faced, the more we remember the resilience we have in the Philippines is excellent, as is the Pacific, then the better chance we have of conquering that forgetfulness, which really opens up communities, individual households and countries to the impacts of disaster. And here in the Philippines, you have such a lot of experience to draw from in terms of Yolanda, which is now, what, five years ago. Here in Bohol, several hazards. And I think the opportunity of this workshop is to really share that experience on the ground, as well as the provincial and national government leadership. Because this is not easy. We're facing a new normal of climate change, which is seeing more extreme, more unpredictable, more intense weather events such as storms, flooding. We're already seeing that both here in the Philippines and the Pacific. But we have other drivers of disaster risk such as rapid urbanization and the fact that we're working against nature, not with nature. So all of these challenges, we really need to look at this, and I would like to commend the leadership of both the national and provincial Philippines government for bringing 12 Pacific island states here, small islands, but maritime cultures, just like you have in the Philippines here. You're a maritime nation, as are these countries. And I think over the next 3 days, what you will hear from the Pacific, even though they're much smaller than the Philippines, is they have a shared culture of resilience. They have a lot of experience. And I think this international exchange is something that will really benefit communities here in the Philippines.
So after you come up with one paper or whatever?
Well, as I said, the outcomes of this 3-day workshop will feed into regional forums and global forums. So next month in Mongolia, there is the biggest event in the disaster reduction world of the 2 years. It's hosted by the government of Mongolia, and that will really set policy objectives and share good practice from around Asia. And this workshop will feed into that. And then next year in Switzerland, the government of Switzerland and the Canton of Geneva will host something called the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction. The whole world comes together. And again, the lessons and the learnings from this workshop between the Philippines and the Pacific, those learnings will be shared at the global platform next month.
So Philippines, there's how about Bohol? Bohol will also be there?
I don't know. Well, let's ask them.
We can go.
It has a lot to share, so we've really encouraged that.
For Provincial Administrator, Sir, Dr. Solido said earlier that they have specifically chosen Bohol for this workshop. So what can you say to that, sir?
Well, we are honored and we are privileged to host this regional workshop. Aside from hosting, Bohol will be a participant to this regional workshop, which will also aim to strengthen our capacity in terms of resiliency and in terms of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. We will be able to acquire maybe from the other participants or from the organizing committee what are the new systems and procedures about disaster risk reduction management. So we are happy as a host province, and we are also willing to share the local initiatives of the provincial government of the province. But let me thank the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction and the German Humanitarian Assistance Office, and of course OCD, and Switzerland, and of course the Office of Civil Defense for coming up with this activity here in the province.
Okay, last two questions, please.
Secretary, relations to this preparing disasters. An engineering professor of the Philippine, a certain Pacheco, said that more than 35% of the low-rise residential route in the region may not be supplied the government structures for the government standard for the constructions.
Well, Dr. Pacheco is a good friend of mine, and we both work together. In fact, in my presentation later, I will show you our software that we developed, and one of the modules there would be how to assess the vulnerability of communities physically based on earthquake, severe wind, and flood. And in terms of earthquake events, looking at Metro Manila as one of the major urban areas that can represent all types of buildings in the country, we really think that at least 13% of residential buildings will be heavily affected. If you combine all the slight to heavy damage in Metro Manila, that would cover slightly 50%. And so I totally agree that we need to ensure that houses and buildings are constructed safely. One problem there lies in the fact that we don't educate our own people on the minimum standards of building houses. For example, if you're not a professional person like an engineering or accounting graduate, architectural graduate, you would not know that the minimum standard of a small house in the Philippines would be using 6 inches hollow blocks and 10 millimeter reinforcing bar. We need to start educating our countrymen about this in high school, so that people will know that if they buy these materials, then they are at risk to major events like earthquakes. More so during construction. We need to modify our way of doing things, because right now permits are given, but during construction no inspections are done. So indeed we need to focus on re-engineering our engineering structures like houses and buildings. But it is important that it is not only the engineers that would know, people should know. It's a governance issue. We need to know that our houses and buildings are strong, because we will be the victims ourselves. We have the right to know.
So it's a by weak enforcement?
It's not, well, the enforcement is not simply the local government's role. It is the role of the individual house owner, because they can actually get permits, but if they don't follow in terms of the materials and design and construction, then the law is a failure if it's not implemented both by the house owner and the local government.
Last question from my end, sir. How do you assess the government's preparation in response to the big one?
Oh, in terms of Manila? Definitely much bigger. In fact, in this current administration, we have, as stated by the President, we have to make Metro Manila earthquake resilient, including the other provinces. So the President and his cabinet approved the 10-point agenda to make sure that Greater Metro Manila is protected. We are developing an alternative government center. We are proposing business and economic development outside of Manila so that we can actually depopulate Metro Manila. But we are strengthening our response capabilities by making sure that outside of Manila, there are available responders. It's in the works. It's a work in progress. But definitely people's initiatives are critical in this, because during an earthquake event, the government can help you. It is you who will be able to decide if you leave or not, if you know what to do during and immediately after it.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm still seeing some delegate who's not really smiling, a bit hesitant.